There are currently 45 of 50 states within the USA that allow for non-medical exemption NME to opt out of the MMR vaccination. In this map, we have identified the states that allow an NME based on religious and/or philosophical beliefs about vaccines. The MMR vaccination is given in a series of 2 shots that reduces the likelihood of contracting the measles to less than 3%. Without filing an NME, all states require vaccination prior to entering kindergarten, or approximately age 5. Often, measles are introduced to a community through international travelers and can be a deadly disease, especially for those age 5 and under. We attempted to create a module that replicates a measles outbreak based on the NME rates given state or city. The NME rates were derived from the Center for Disease Control website. The measles module we have constructed can be used for research on measles outbreak based on NME rates. When there is a higher concentration of NMEs in a city, the likelihood of an outbreak can be demonstrated through the module. Our research would be able to identify the tipping point of too many NMEs for a city.
Hello, this is Chris Marks. I'm going to provide a quick overview and demonstration of our integration of a non-medical vaccine exemption capability into Synthea. We have provided a walkthrough on GitHub. The walkthrough uses Python and Unix shell tools to reproduce our work. First, we set up the environment and clone Synthea into the working folder. We modify the immunizations.java module and copy our measles non-medical exemption module and measles infection submodule into the source code. We have a Python script that builds the lookup transition tables to support these modules. Once we've run that, we rebuild Synthea and run the Synthea code to produce the synthetic records. Finally, we provide an analysis script that is a Dockerized executable of some R analysis code that produces nice plots and visualizations of the output. The immunizations non-medical exemption module that we have provided uses the new capability that we have put into the immunizations.java workflow. This module sets an NME attribute for the MMR vaccine for a subset of patients based on lookup table probabilities. These lookup table probabilities reference the patient's location and essentially their birth date in determining the probability of setting a non-medical exemption. Once a patient has a non-medical exemption, they enter the susceptibility loop where they wait until exposure, and if the lookup table probability is high enough and their number comes up, they get infected with measles. The measles infection submodule flows through a straightforward measles infection workflow that includes a 20% hospitalization rate and a 1% child death, a 0.1% child death rate, which is in accordance with the statistics collected by the Center for Disease Control. We provide several methods for validating the synthetic data. First, we compare the annual observed non-medical exemption rates in each state against the synthetic non-medical exemption rates for each state. Where we have data, we find that the observed non-medical exemption rates for each state are fairly strongly correlated with the synthetic values. We also observe annual measles infection rates in the U.S. over time. We built our lookup table probabilities to produce measles rates that were proportional to observed measles rates over the last 10 years. We see by comparing bar plots of these measles rates that the outputs of Synthea are very closely proportional to the observed measles rates in the U.S. Finally, we just take a look at the spatial distribution of measles cases through the United States and compare them with the synthetic distribution of measles cases. Here we compare the 2019 outbreaks on the left with the 2019 synthetic case distribution on the right. We notice that in general, the density of cases occurs around population centers with high NME rates. However, these two plots do not match exactly, as we did not attempt to match the spatial distributions of annual outbreaks in the U.S. I want to thank you for our interest